You know that feeling you get sometimes when you just look around and think, something is fundamentally broken here? Like, the system we're all in isn't just struggling, it's actually working against most of us? Well, if you feel that way, you are definitely not alone. And today, we're going to dig into why that is.
I mean, if you spend any time online, you've seen the term pop up everywhere. Late-stage capitalism, right? It's become this catch-all phrase for, well, everything. From the crazy levels of inequality to that constant feeling that we're all just running on a hamster wheel, hustling just to stay in the same place. And this is true whether you're in the US or in India. It's kind of become the default answer for what's wrong.
But what if that label is just completely wrong? Seriously, what if this system that's causing all this stress, all this inequality, isn't actually capitalism at all, but it's polar opposite? Now that is a pretty wild idea, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack right now.
Okay, so if the real villain of the story isn't capitalism, then what is? Well, the argument we're looking at today says we're living in a state of anti-capitalism. And to understand that, let's start by looking at the most obvious symptom, the one we can all see. I mean, we are living through truly historic levels of inequality. This chart right here just lays it out so clearly. In big economies, the top 1%, just 1% of the population, holds about half of the country's entire wealth. Think about that for a second. That is a staggering, almost unbelievable concentration of money and power. And to really get a sense of how fast this has happened, let's just rewind the clock a bit, say to about a decade ago. Back in 2012, if you were a top-tier billionaire, your net worth was somewhere around $50 billion. Now that's a massive, massive number for sure, but just wait till you see how it compares to today. Okay, now let's jump back to today. That $50 billion figure, it's completely dwarfed. Today's biggest fortunes are rocketing towards $800 billion. This isn't just some steady, gradual growth. It's a straight-up explosion of wealth, but only at the very, very top. So this leads us to the big, crucial question, right? How on earth did this happen? What is the actual mechanism at play here that is funneling so much wealth to the top and doing it so incredibly fast?
All right, so how does all this money get transferred? Well, the process has a kind of technical-sounding name, liquidity injection. I know, it sounds complicated, but trust me, the game being played here is actually pretty simple and honestly pretty concerning.
So here's the game, broken down into 4 steps. Step 1. The government, which isn't tied to something like a gold standard anymore, can basically print new money out of thin air. Step 2. This new money gets pushed into the market as liquidity. But here's the key. This is the really clever part. Step 3. That money doesn't spread out evenly. Oh no. The whole system is set up so that it funnels directly into assets, stocks, real estate, things that are mostly owned by the wealthy. And then, the most important part, step 4. The rest of us, we get stuck with the bill. It comes in the form of inflation, which makes the little money we do have worth less and less. So what happens when a tiny, tiny group of people has that much financial firepower? I mean, we're not just talking about buying yachts and private jets. No, they use that wealth to systematically wipe out their competition, creating massive monopolies that can basically charge whatever they want for things. And of course, they use it to buy political influence, making absolutely sure that the rules of the game are always, always written in their favor.
Okay, hold on. All of that sounds really bad. But it also sounds a lot like what most people mean when they say capitalism, right? So why is the argument here that this is the exact opposite? What makes this whole setup fundamentally anti-capitalist? Well, the whole argument really boils down to 2 huge contradictions. 2 ways this system is actively sabotaging the very foundations of what should be a healthy economy.
Okay, here's the fundamental difference laid out side by side. Think about it. A truly capitalist system needs 2 things to thrive: a healthy, productive workforce and genuine competition. Our system today? It's doing the exact opposite. It actively neglects the well-being of the workforce and it crushes competition to create monopolies. It's basically eating its own seed corn. So let's just stop and think about this for a second. In a healthy capitalist society, what's the government's #1 job? You could say it's to make sure the system stays healthy for the long run. And how do you do that? By creating policies that make sure your population, your workforce, is healthy, educated, and productive. I mean, that's the engine of the whole economy, right? And yet, when we look around at our current reality, what do we see? We see a system that is failing, and I mean spectacularly failing, at that exact job. It's failing to protect our physical health. It's failing to protect our mental health. and it's failing to make sure that something as basic as healthcare is even affordable for people.
And the examples are they're everywhere you look. It's not a secret that all these ultra-processed foods are making the workforce sick and less productive, but they're not really regulated. It's obvious that unaffordable healthcare creates a sicker population, but the problem doesn't get fixed. And we all know that addictive social media is just frying our collective attention spans and mental health, but almost nothing is done to rein it in.
And this gets to the bizarre central contradiction of the whole system. They want maximum productivity from the population, right? But at the same time, they allow the very things that make people unwell. It just makes no sense. It's a totally self-defeating cycle.
So, where does all this leave us? What's the big takeaway when we look at things from this new perspective?
It seems like the new motto, the core principle of this anti-capitalist system, is pretty simple. Extract the maximum amount of value, health, and attention from every single person and give absolutely as little as possible back. No security, no well-being, no sustainable future.
And look, this isn't just some abstract economic theory. It has real, devastating consequences for all of us. It's a system that literally takes your physical health and your mental health and turns it into profit. And the shocking part is, no one is ever held accountable.
Which leaves us with one last, really unsettling question to think about. If what we're all living through isn't late-stage capitalism, if it's a system that's actively destroying the foundations of a healthy market and a healthy population, then what in the world should we be calling it?